In the culture wars, there are no winners, just podcasters. Only a few are willing to risk their lives in the face of some of the dumbest ideas to have ever captured human civilization. Every week, we, Meghan Daum and Sarah Hayter, humbly accept this mission to bring you conversations that are equal parts stunning, rave, and debauched, held privately, secretly in an underground bunker.
Chased by porn. Okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry. We just conflated our two topics. Trying to give anything away. Sex party, Molly. We're going to be talking about underground sex parties during COVID in a little bit. That was our teaser. But first, have you ever been to an underground sex party? We'll just, tee this up for a minute. Or an above ground one?
No. Maybe. No.
Maybe?
No. Maybe there are parties where it starts off normal. This is what I was reading about the Sean Diddy Combs his sex parties, where they would start off as regular parties, and then as the night would go on,
yes,
the normies would leave and the weirdos would stay, and then those weirdos would leave and the super freaks would stay with who are into the really debauched, insane shit. And they would, I guess, do what they do.
Right. It starts off as like a child's birthday party, right? With the bouncy castle.
It starts off in the early afternoon,
right?
With cake and pizza.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Chuck E. Cheese. It was always obvious that those Chuck E. Cheese characters were just like big furries. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Well, speaking of more lofty things, we have a number of topics to cover, but I do want to say I went to see Douglas Murray the other night in Los Angeles. He's on tour, sold out theaters, huge venues.
What's he on tour for? Is it a new book?
How to Save the West.
Oh,
the Save the West tour. Everyone's on tour. All the intellectuals, Richard Dawkins, Douglas Murray.
Why are we on tour? Nobody but us.
No. Jordan Peterson probably always on tour. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was interesting. It was, I did not realize that Douglas Murray has been all Israel all the time for the last year.
Mm.
But this has been the main thing he's been talking about, and he's been reporting from Israel, and I guess he's done a lot of reporting in the Middle East over the years, and now he's really been focusing on that. And he, I guess, is now recognized as one of the few reporters, one of the few journalists, or I mean, whatever you want to call him, public intellectuals, people in the media space,
truth teller,
thought
warrior,
speaking up about Israel. I mean, lots of them are, I guess, but I guess he has been sort of anointed as the chief spokesperson and champion of Israel. So it was like the Jewish community showed up to pay him some kind of show of gratitude, to show their appreciation for this. So it was, it was quite moving. And well, first of all, I mean, he walks into the stage and it's a standing ovation. I mean, it was as if Bruce Springsteen had walked onto the stage, and this was a huge, huge theater. I mean, line was around the block to get in. It was it had that feeling. And he spent the first half, he was showing video footage of him talking to people in Israel in the aftermath of October 7th. And a lot of it was really hard to watch. Just the scenes of massacres at the kibbutz and at the Nova Festival and other sites. And so he would talk, and then he would show the footage, and he would talk some more, and then an interlocutor came out and they had a conversation. But I mean, it was moving, but it wasn't really any new information. It was kind of curious. It was very I was hoping he would talk about why Islam has invaded the West. I mean, there was a tiny bit of that.
That's not new information either, though. Well, that's not. I mean, but I feel like all of these tours are kind of having conversations about things that everyone has talked about on 100,000
Right.
podcasts.
Well, that's like rock bands tour and play the songs everybody already knows because they're on the radio. So that's what people will show up to hear, as opposed to something totally out of left field. But I don't know. I thought there weren't. I was hoping there would be sort of like more ideas going on.
But I think you're right that it's just a bunch of fans who want to see a performer, essentially, you know, like their favorite intellectual perform. But they're not really actually there for a new and, you know, challenging conversation.
No, I mean, a lot of people were wearing shirts that said Zionist. I saw several women. I mean, it was very much like, we are the Jewish community. I'm surprised there wasn't more security, actually, now that I think of it.
I'm surprised there isn't more security everywhere, honestly.
I know.
Because I feel like now, like, political violence is back. Like, great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it was like the free press was just mentioned briefly and the audience broke out in applause. It was that kind of thing. But, you know, I thought it was definitely an interesting evening. I'm glad I went. And I just think it's kind of heartening that people are showing up for
in-person
intellectual events.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know how I feel about live events. I don't know how I feel about tours.
Really?
And I'm glad it's happening.
But
is it the same thing as a true and live discourse? Or is it just like, you know, the fandom?
Well, it's
translating
it's a
over, like,
representation of the discourse, right? It's kind of like, yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know. Let me think about this. You think you could not accomplish on stage what you could accomplish on a podcast, for instance?
No. Yeah, I don't think you could. Definitely not. It's the same. It's a totally different energy. Like, as a performer, I can't, to me, they're so, like, they're just totally different animals. I don't even consider the live events an intellectual kind of an activity.
Right. Are you talking about your debate? You're thinking of your sexual revolution debate.
Well,
that was a show for sure.
It was more intellectual than like some other events. But I mean, in the sense that I had to show up and I had to think actively, you know, like there were new arguments being presented, or like, you know, a version of an argument that I didn't perfectly anticipate. And then I had to think on my feet and respond to it. But I don't feel like that's how these events kind of go. You know, like, it's like everyone knows what everybody's going to be talking about and saying.
Yeah.
Audience questions are never new. You know, they're never, I mean, to the audience members, I think they're like, wow, this is the first, like, this is something I've been thinking about, and maybe they haven't heard this before. But really, if you do this a lot, you've heard every single kind of question from the audience. And nothing really surprises you. I don't know. How do you feel about them? Are they intellectual to you? Like those kinds of like live events? Is that what it feels like?
I mean, I haven't gone to that many. This is like a relatively new phenomenon. I mean, it's kind of a post-COVID phenomenon. I mean, people like, well, I mean, there've always been lectures and things, but just like, at least in terms of like the kind of whatever heterodoxy or the dissenting left. That's something that arose during COVID. And
I think pop intellectuals have reached, like, there's a new kind of a category that maybe didn't exist in the same exact way as before. But I remember the first time I saw an event like that. Actually, I was one of the panelists in an event with Sam Harris, and that was the biggest one I ever went to. And I was shocked by the size of the theater. And it was Sam, obviously, who sold out all those seats. The line was, it was, as I think, probably similar to what you describe with Douglas Murray. I don't know how big that theater was, but the theater that we were in was huge, like huge. I couldn't believe he could fill so many seats. And those tickets were expensive. Like, they were extremely expensive. And he filled those seats out. And then people stayed even longer to have him sign a book.
Right.
I thought it was I could not have anticipated it, imagined it until I saw it in person. And then I was shocked with the kind of celebrity status that some of these, you know, intellectuals.
I think it's good. I mean,
it is good, but
yeah, I don't know. I guess you realize it's a big world and there are big audiences for lots of different things,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
And it is a good thing that it's like democratizing a kind of, the kind of conversation that would have in another time been held at a university
yeah,
for 40 people is now being held for 4,000 people at
yeah,
an enormous auditorium.
yeah. I mean, when I was in college, there's nothing I loved more than when somebody came in to do a lecture. I went
Oh,
to just
really?
every single one, no matter who it
Really?
was. I loved it. Yeah. I
Oh, why?
loved, I don't
Just
know.
hearing
It
them?
was like ideas and I couldn't wait. Like, I don't,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't like. I mean, I would go to a few, but I didn't go to them regularly. They were frustrating to me.
Well, they were probably really big. I mean, I went to a small college, so
No, I mean,
they would
there
have
were
been small.
smaller kind of. There were
Mhm.
smaller, seminar, like smaller auditoriums filled with, some philosopher or something who
Mhm. Yeah.
wrote a paper, and mostly other academics wanted to talk to her, or really they wanted to like ask a question that made them out to be extremely
Right.
smart.
Right. Yeah. So they can get a blurb for the next book. Yeah. Or a peer review. Yeah. Anyway, so that was Douglas Murray. Yeah, it was very moving, and obviously we're approaching the anniversary of October 7th, and I know the Nova Festival, the Nova exhibit has been going around, and it's apparently quite something. I have not seen it, but yeah. Cannot believe it's been a year already.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
It doesn't feel like a year, does it?
No.
I feel like a couple months ago.
I know, but it's, yeah, I mean, those hostages have been in there almost a year now.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
horrible to think about.
Yeah. All right.
That's too serious. I don't want to be talking about that.
Yeah, let's move on to better things. So what do we have?
All kinds of sexcapades.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on?
It's been a big week and sexting and sexual confessions,
misadventures. There was somebody who accused Christopher Rufo. Did you see that, of having an Ashley Madison account?
leak? Yes.
But then turns out that it might have been a hoax. I don't know. We don't
really?
know. Well, he says that it was not. It's not.
Of course,
not real.
Of course, he says that.
Well, he says that in 2014, which is when the account was created, he said that supposedly created. He said that he hadn't even met his wife at that time, so he was single. So what was he going to be doing on
Madison?
Well, that's what he says, is that he wasn't,
unless he wanted to have an affair with a married woman. Like, that's his thing.
Maybe. Do you think that? I thought Ashley Madison was just like a bunch of guys, just like every other.
I mean, there's women.
Like, that was my understanding.
Right, a lot of the
Ashley
women are
Madison.
fake on there. Actually, there's a great documentary about the Ashley Madison hack. And you would think it was just like some like normal random documentary, but it's so good. And it's about the people who created it and the communications behind it, like the marketing of it. And it follows the stories of like a couple of the people who got, caught up and, their stuff revealed. And their reasons for joining it are like totally fascinating. Yeah, like there was this one guy, like he, his wife, they were like super Christian and very wholesome, and they had a couple kids and they lived in the South somewhere, and he was just bored in his marriage and like just started going on there and like, got totally obsessed with it and texting with these women. And I think he ended up meeting some, but then this amazing twist happens where his wife, oh, I know. They were already. Oh, no. Then somehow like they became like famous vloggers. So like this was back in the day, like video blogging, like that was the sort of, they became like, sort of Instagram celebrities before there was Instagram, I guess. They were
husband and wife.
Yeah, husband and wife. And so they were like a husband and wife influencer, but like very Christian and very wholesome. And he loved the attention and like just the experience of being part of that world. And they would go to like conventions for this sort of thing. And they were pretty well known. And just he totally lost interest in Ashley Madison in the wake of this celebrity around the the video blogging about his marriage. And so it was obviously scratching some itch. He had just some need for validation that wasn't being met somehow. Fascinating.
Yeah. Isn't the couple that started it, they're married. They were a couple, right? Like when they started it, the founder of it was married.
Yeah. And
his wife
whole
knew.
thing. Yeah, this guy Noel Biederman, who I actually interviewed. I wrote an LA Times column on this when it first started, or when they first started heavily marketing it. I think Noel Biederman, he was the CEO at one point. I don't know if he was one of the original founders, but he was like the name behind it. Yeah, and his whole thing was like, well, I'm happily married, so this isn't for me. But blah blah blah. And then later he was found out to be cheating on his wife. But the wives often forgive. It appears. You gotta cut your losses, I guess, or not cut your losses, or know which battles to fight. Anyway, yeah. So there've been some. Olivia, is it Nuzzi? How are we going to pronounce her name? Nuzzi. I agree. That's probably the pronunciation. Rhymes. It's like pizza. Nutsy Gate.
Other people have been saying Nuzzi, so we could go Nuzzi.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So Olivia, can we say Olivia? Is that too? It's too informal.
Too
we don't know
familiar.
Her. Yeah, we don't know her. You don't know her. I don't know her. I didn't know much about her actually until this news popped up on the scene of her salacious, yet online only affair.
Digital. She said it was a digital.
Well, she says it's an affair, and he said it's a one-way, porn stalking. I don't know what would you call? He doesn't call it an affair. That's just.
It was I guess she was. So Olivia Nuzzi, she was the Washington correspondent for New York Magazine. So she actually became known because she had been an intern for Anthony Weiner during his campaign for mayor in 2013. And so she kind of rose to prominence just kind of talking about that stuff. And then she was a reporter for Daily Beast covering the campaign, Trump campaign. I mean, that election cycle anyway. So yeah, she's a political reporter. And yeah, she's known for getting like very deep inside scoops into prominent figures. And she had profiled Trump right after the assassination attempt. And, I guess notably she was engaged to Ryan Liza. It's really good if you have a double Z in your name. I think it's really good. You should really only date other people with double Z's. So she very wisely was with Ryan Liza. Great writer, great reporter. He was Politico's chief Washington correspondent. Anyway, so she was.
He's 50.
Okay. Yeah. She's 30. She's 31.
She's 31. And I mean, it was rumored. I don't know. Is this true? Can you confirm this? That he left his wife for?
I don't know. He was
Olivia,
not confirmed.
I don't know.
He was.
That's
previously
irresponsible.
married.
I shouldn't say that.
Well, I don't know. Anyway, he was. I don't know the timeline. Anyway, so she has a type. She likes older, powerful men. And in covering RFK Jr., it looks like she was sort of getting him to, feel comfortable disclosing things to her by sending him intimate photos of herself.
Well, this happened after, right? So she had the profile came out in the New Yorker, and then she continued to sort of
New York
pursue him.
Magazine, not the New Yorker.
In New York Magazine.
Yeah.
And she continued to pursue him.
Right. And he's 70, by the way, just so we have everything.
70. So she does
because her fiance just seemed a little too young.
Yeah, a little too immature,
too boyish.
Yeah, and she needed a real man. Did you read the essay? I read it for the first time after this happened.
Her piece on RFK?
On RFK, yeah.
No, I didn't read it.
No, I didn't read it.
We have so much stuff in New York Magazine to read that I can only get 3 free articles a month, so I didn't want to waste it on that one.
On this. This is okay. Well, this piece snippets of it were going around on Twitter, and here's this part. I'm going to read it to you. And she's writing this about this man, and it I guess it puts the affair in a interesting light.
Okay.
Bobby, as he's known to friends, walked through the French doors dressed for his morning hike in blue jeans, a black hoodie, Keens, and an unfriendly expression. He said little as he led his 3 enormous canines to the van, though I don't know what he could have said that would have prepared me for the sight of the thing. That the dog car survived a nuclear war, maybe, or even more frightening, the chickenpox vaccine. Rearview mirror smashed to bits, seat belts chewed off, cushions not open, filth and dog hair covering every surface. The death machine smells so bad, I thought I might pass out after about 15 seconds riding shotgun, and that was before the candidate hung a sharp left and sped off towards the trailhead, the dogs barking and toppling over the area of the car that theoretically should contain back seats, but instead holds a wooden bench. "Shut up, you idiots," he told the dogs. At least I think he was talking to them.
Wow. Wait, where are they going? to a media hit at CNN? Where are they going?
I don't remember. Maybe, I don't know. Does he travel in this thing?
What is this? Like a
This
truck?
is from her. This is from.
I know, but like,
I have to look it up again.
I missed this. Are they going hunting? What are they doing? Okay. Well, that's okay. That's pretty good. That's pretty good writing.
First of all, it's good writing. That's the first thing that occurred to me when I read that. Was that it was good writing, and I enjoyed reading it. It was entertaining. She painted a very strong picture of this man, but was it a sexy picture? Something about the smell of the thing. Like, I don't know. It certainly paints a picture in my mind, and not a good one.
Well,
and she wrote this.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, she wants to have a good article. I mean, that's the ultimate goal.
Maybe she likes it like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's
like
trying
a crazy, alpha male.
I mean, there's nothing better when you're out reporting a story and like something insane happens and you're in an insane situation. You're like, yes, this is gonna be great. This is gonna write itself. I'm so happy. Even if you're miserable in the moment, you're like, oh, thank God, this will be so easy when I get back to my desk. Well, I don't know. It's this. Is this like a new? Okay, and also notably, so initially when the story came out, she was saying that it was not an actual, that they did not have an actual affair, that it was emotional and digital, by which she does not mean, fingers, digital. So like, okay, how common is that? Just to have, because it really does seem like people are conducting like entire relationships via text and FaceTime and on screens, and this counts as an affair. I mean, how seriously should we take this?
I would count this as an affair. If this was my husband or me, I would count it as an affair. I think if there's anything intimate, anything sexual happening beyond like flirtation, but it has to be light flirtation. It cannot be like sexts, I think that crosses the line. So I think they both cross the line. But his camp is saying, and I mean, I don't even know if they are necessarily speaking, but there was a piece on Substack by Jessica Reed Krause, House in Habit, the Substack. Don't know who she is. First time I'm reading anything by her. And she wrote a piece, published September 21st, on this whole affair. She is a friend of RFK, kind of a groupie of RFK, I guess, friend/groupie of the campaign, and has gotten to know Miss Nuzzi recently. and become friends with her. And so she writes about her experiences getting to know her and kind of feeling as if Olivia, warmed into her life for the purposes of getting to RFK. I mean, this is what she's claiming, right? This is what this woman's claiming. It felt to me as if her entire piece was like coming from the RFK campaign. Although I don't know for sure, but if this woman really cares about this candidate and his causes or whatever, like, it doesn't seem like insane to me that it would be connected. Anyway, so this piece goes into Nuzzi and sort of paints her as somebody who is willing to do just about anything to get to a source, to get the goods that she needs from them. So she's like she's using her sexuality, seducing people into giving her a good story and giving her access. How do you feel about this? Did you read this article? The Talented Miss Nuzzi?
No, I haven't actually. I've been too busy going to Douglas Murray events and doing stuff around the house. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many ways to think about this. I mean, obviously, this is unprofessional. This is not how journalists should behave. She does deserve to get fired. I mean, can you imagine if it was a man? I don't know what the sort of male version of this would be. Obviously, if he was sending dick pics, if some reporter was covering, Kamala Harris and cozying up to her.
Or Marianne Williamson. Okay. It has to be like the political
right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Well, that might be, I mean, yeah, maybe Marianne Williamson would be open to that. Who knows? Or if it was like Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, she would not tolerate that.
But yeah, send a hit.
She could handle it though. You know what? She'd be like, get lost, get out of here. I mean, this does not do any favors to young female journalists. Do you think it sets women back, or are we past that?
I didn't know you could still do this. This works.
Why not?
I guess. I mean, I just didn't know it was an option. I'm going to be honest. Like, I thought everybody saw through this kind of thing.
Not if you're a 70-year-old dude. I mean, this is his wheelhouse. Like, this guy's had multiple affairs. He's a Kennedy. There's no limits.
He should be the first to see through it, though, in the sense that, yes, he's vulnerable to it, but precisely because he's vulnerable to it and he's had so many experiences with women, if indeed he's being preyed upon by this woman, he should know how to handle it. And it seems like he didn't. He just keeps on. So according to this Jessica Reed Krause's piece, Nuzzi keeps sending him sexy pictures. Let me read directly from it.
Okay.
Friends of Kennedy believe Nuzzi set him up. They recount that just 2 weeks after New York Magazine published her article, she made a flirtatious remark during a phone conversation. In response, Kennedy blocked her number. A few weeks later, Nuzzi emailed him asking to be unblocked, claiming she had urgent information about a hit piece being prepared against him. He unblocked her for that conversation. But later that night, she sent him a provocative picture, prompting him to block her again. For most of the next 8 months, Kennedy kept her blocked, except for a few occasions when Nuzzi contacted him from different emails and phone numbers, insisting he unblock her for urgent discussions about an imminent hit piece. Once unblocked, she bombarded him with increasingly pornographic photos and videos he found difficult to resist. After brief exchanges, he would block her again. Security expert Gavin D. Becker is currently investigating the situation for civil litigation that Kennedy intends to file, as well as for potential criminal referrals. This had nothing to do with romance, said D. Becker. He was being chased by porn.
Gavin De Becker is investigating this? Like, Gavin De Becker is a celebrity security expert. The Gift of Fear. It's a great book, by the way. I didn't realize he's working for, he's investigating this for the Department of Justice or something. Okay. Anyway, he's a hired
for
private
civil
eye.
litigation.
Okay.
Kennedy intends to file, may or may not, probably won't.
She wore him down. Look, these guys are vulnerable. Yeah, he did the right thing. He blocked her. He knew it. And finally he's like, oh, what the hell? Okay. And if he's bragging to his friends, that's what happened.
If you
he bragged to his friends.
somebody and they send you a nude, okay, they tricked you once, shame on them. But you have to block her several times, and every time she keeps bombarding you with sexual pictures, you know what she's going to do, right? Like maybe at that point, don't unblock her if in fact this is what's happening. But I don't believe it. I just have a hard time believing that. The porn.
Maybe he was bragging to his friend. So, but wasn't this all arose because he was bragging to his friends about it, and maybe he said, "Oh, I'll prove it to you, and I'm going to unblock her just so I can show my buddy." Who knows?
He's okay. 100%. He has those pictures saved somewhere. Of course he does. He's not going to lose access to them. They're saved. Of course they are with his in his stash.
Okay.
Men are very
I don't know, but he's also 70 years old. Maybe
for their life.
We don't know how good he is at the technology.
One thing he knows how to do. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, but okay. So what?
None of this makes any sense.
But the stereotype of the female journalist is that she sleeps with her sources. The young female cub reporter is going to use her feminine wiles to seduce her sources. And, that's taken a lot of criticism, and that's considered very sexist and harmful to the careers of women. And so here we have this kind of thing. So do you find this personally offensive?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, I don't, because do you find it offensive? Are you feeling like
no?
Now everyone's going to suspect, your work and think that you got there.
Meghan would never have published all those essays if she hadn't been sleeping with somebody. Yes. See, I'm
not successful enough for anyone to wonder about that. Right? Like, I think if I was incredibly successful, then I would be very upset and threatened by that.
I mean, I do think that there's something, when you're a young, we've talked about this, when you're a young woman and you're very professionally ambitious, one way you want help, you want mentorship, right? You want somebody who's going to give you contacts. You want somebody who's going to introduce you to people.
And other women aren't going to do it, right? Like that's the other thing.
Sometimes
that I feel like
they are, but often they're not. And one, it's not difficult to find an older man who's going to be happy to do that. And that doesn't mean that you have to sleep with him or even really flirt with him or anything. But like, if you have the advantage, that is an advantage that young professional females have, that like young male professionals, they have certain other advantages, but that just doesn't happen to be one of them. I mean, maybe they can get mentorship from older men.
They can get mentorship from old men so much more easily than women can get mentorship from women.
Do you think that's still true, or that?
I think that's always going to be true. Like, we don't change our nature overnight, and I don't think that. I mean, it might change a little in the sense that now that there are more women around who have senior positions,
right?
There might be more who have the kind of disposition.
Yeah, there weren't that many
except
before.
Younger. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think all things being equal, they're just that kind of relationship doesn't really exist for women. And so maybe this is how she advanced. This was the avenue open to her, and it's clearly open to her. She's very good looking. I don't know.
Yeah,
I find it baffling that you would send nude pictures to a 7-year-old man.
Okay, but don't people do? Okay, like you're the spokesperson for your generation, though. But like, how common is this? People are constantly
sending each other
sexting
nudes.
And sending. But I mean, again, like, this is so out of my experience. I have never. Maybe I'm like outing myself as a total prude. I don't do that. I don't receive it. I don't do it. It's just not part of my communication style.
It's not in your communication toolbox.
That's right.
I mean, maybe you should be more open-minded.
Yeah. No, I should do the work on that.
As increasingly you have a digital life, you need to have a digital sex life. It's part of a healthy online life.
That's true.
You do your work, and then it's time for digital sex.
Yeah, you're right. I should make time. You know what? We have to make time in our schedule. It's part of
intimacy.
Self-care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to probably upgrade my phone or get some more.
We need like
memory.
an Emily post for like sext etiquette.
Well,
you know
I'm
what
sure
I mean?
they
Or
have
just
that.
etiquette.
They've
Like
a million.
What do you
sex
do if
columnists.
someone sends you nudes, like unsolicited? If you like
a million advice
maybe
columns.
a thank you note.
Yeah. Is there
you
an
don't
emoji
like
oh, LOL? Yeah.
Not LOL.
Not
I don't
LOL,
think
but like,
if someone,
and
if
if someone sends you a dick pic and you say LOL, is that bad?
It's great if you hate it.
No, you just be like, give it a heart, give it a thank you.
Give it an eggplant emoji.
What does that mean?
Or a peach emoji. And
does that have
emoji? Eggplant emoji, I think it means penis. I think that's what that
Really?
Is. Yeah. An eggplant is a penis.
Wait, I've been using that because I thought we were talking about going to the farmer's market. Oh, shit.
Or the peach. Yeah, peach is a butt. I know that.
What?
You knew that.
I did not. I did not. You know what? I had this thing for a long time that on principle, I refuse to use emojis because I think they're lame, lazy, stupid, cheap, juvenile, and I just refuse to use them. And now I have just had to surrender because apparently my texting is lacking, and I often don't respond at all because I don't know what to say. And if you just respond with an emoji, then you've like responded.
Yep. Well, we've established that you just feel like you need to say something to somebody. I'm okay with just blowing them off. But just be careful. No peaches, no eggplants. Stay away from fruits and vegetables, I would say. Of all kind. You never know where you could don't do the there's like droplets. Don't do that. Don't do a tongue.
Why?
I don't know, but I've seen it in sex related posts.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Don't do any of those. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
At New York, I think it was the gay pride parade that I went to in 2018. The grinder float was one big eggplant.
Really?
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a farm to table restaurant.
No, it was definitely like the emoji, the eggplant emoji, and then they just had a bunch of strippers like dancing on it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. No idea.
Okay. Now you know.
That was worth
now
the
you know
price
what to do.
of this entire podcast. All the time spent. Yeah. All right. Well, if you're, I don't know.
Okay. Wait. Hold on. And we have to say that what's his name inserted himself into the conversation. Keith Olbermann.
Oh, Keith Olbermann, who she also dated.
Yeah, and he just came out of nowhere. Was like, me too.
Yeah.
I also
the other me too. The other kind of me too. Yes.
He just really needed to be. He really wanted everybody to know that he slept with her, and she's very hot. And now he's relevant, and I don't know, getting high fives, digital high fives from people. And he's 65, so I should say that. So she has a type, and it's I don't know, geriatric.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think tellingly. So Ben Smith, seasoned reporter, is now the editor of Semaphore, which he created. He said, amid all the self-righteous indignation about it, he said, reporters have all sorts of compromising relationships with sources. That's the real coin of the realm. Sex barely rates.
Yeah, that's a little weird. Is that true? In your experience?
No, I mean, I think that's unethical. I mean, it's not, I mean,
like deeply unethical,
I mean, they have,
right?
this is like, I don't know. I would have to read that. This is just one quote from something he wrote in a blog post. So I have to read the rest of it, but that sounds pretty cynical.
Yeah.
Although he did say, if you are, the policy at his publication that if a reporter is having a romantic entanglement with a source, for the love of God, tell your editor.
Ugh. You don't want to tell them that. That's embarrassing.
Lack of disclosure. But I mean, this is how people meet often. They're reporting on
Olbermann confirmed that he dated Nuzzi about 10 years ago when Olbermann was 55 and she was 21. About 21. That's gross. That's incredibly gross.
So she was an intern. That's probably when she was working for
That's incredibly
Wiener.
gross. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's, I don't know. I mean, maybe she's going for it. Maybe she was actively searching for this kind of thing.
Wonder where she'll go. Wonder where she'll turn up after all this.
It'll be sad to see her go. I feel like I've brushed up against her writing here and there, and I've liked it.
She can still write. She'll probably write a great book.
About what?
I don't know.
Having a thing for older guys.
She can be like a kind of sexy gonzo journalist, talking about, look, if this was a guy, like, yeah, she could. It would be kind of funny. She could be a kind of.
It would be a totally different. It would be he would be the predator.
Yeah,
like this is not being painted as.
But I'm just saying she could, if in a literary sense, she could kind of just own it, lean into it. You know, Confessions of a sex driven reporter, something like this.
But yeah, I mean, and I just to be clear, this is what the RFK camp is saying. We don't really have a lot of details coming from her other than they had this sort of intimate relationship. And I'm not taking what Jessica Reed Krause says, I mean, with a grain of salt. I'm taking it with a grain of salt, many grains of salt, because she has a reason, to paint this very differently.
Yeah.
As an old man being, I don't know, chased by porn, attacked by porn. I hate it when that happens.
Yeah.
Has anybody you profiled? I mean, you don't have to say who.
Have I slept with any of them?
I'm not saying have you. I wasn't asking about that. I was asking you about, has anybody come on to you, like a subject, or like made an overture, like wanted to be in a relationship? Is this a one-way thing? Is it something reporters do to people they profile and not the other way around?
No, I mean, I'm sure I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I mean, you're a young, woman going around talking to older men occasionally.
I didn't really profile like, I don't know. No. I profiled Elon Musk. He did not hit on me.
He didn't ask you to incubate his baby?
No.
Weird.
I don't know how often this really happens. I mean, there's definitely
that's the thing. I thought this didn't happen. That's what's weird about
this. Is extreme.
Everything about this is just like out of a movie. It's not.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it does, and it probably there is, because we're in this kind of like sex positive moment where this kind of behavior, it can be construed. You can talk yourself into it. You can justify it to yourself by thinking like, oh, I'm just using everything I have. Like I am. This is empowerment. This is actually like just an extension of my professional ambition, and it's fine. Like
who's gonna tell you that you're being inappropriate? You know what I mean? Like, let's say you're a young woman, you're crossing the line.
The thing.
Who tells you off? Nobody, right?
Because I think that it's this whole world of OnlyFans and porn, and women. It's like you can be a public intellectual who also like happens to be a stripper, or what. Like, it's just all this stuff is all jumbled up. So I don't think you have that puritanical kind of bench of elders saying like, no, this is not acceptable. You can't.
Or if they exist, they don't say anything.
Yeah,
right? Like they know not to say anything.
Or if they wouldn't, but you wouldn't take them seriously if they did. So I just think it's different.
I wonder if a little bit of what's going on here is just plain old jealousy with her. You know what I mean? Like it feels as if it came out of nowhere. This whole like scandal. And I mean, she's talented. She's young, she's good looking. I'm sure she has a lot of enemies or people who are really, really happy to hear that she didn't earn anything. Not really. Like she's been using something, some kind of privilege of hers, unethically to get an advantage. And I bet there's a lot of that going on. Just given how, I don't know, it just feels like very.
Yeah. I mean, it's too bad
jealousy driven.
She's a good reporter. She's a great writer. It's too bad that she thought that this was necessary. I mean, maybe more than anything, it's a commentary on just like how competitive the media
industry
spaces. Like you just can't, in order to get ahead, to distinguish yourself, it's not enough to just write like some dazzling piece, like the way Matt Taibbi used to write. Like her writing kind of reminds me of like the old school Matt Taibbi.
I liked it.
Yeah, I mean that's the god that they want to be Hunter S. Thompson. Like that's that style. But it used to be that if you were sort of a dazzling prose stylist, that was enough. But maybe it's not now. So. Yeah. Anyway. All right. What else do we have? More sexcapades.
More sex. We don't have to talk about this, but I mean, I don't know. It feels like last week I was trying to think about what we should talk about, and every other story was like some sex scandal with another figure. It was like the fake scandal with Rufo, or possibly fake. We don't know. I mean, he says it could be. The Sean Diddy Combs thing that I think you haven't been following because
I'm racist and I don't follow that genre.
Or maybe it's racist to think about Black men this way.
Yeah, I don't actually want to be racist, so
right. It's anti-racist to ignore the story, but it turns out that he's been. Story has been ongoing for a couple of months for the anti-racist whites who are tuning into it. But turns out he has been kind of a predator for a long time. I mean, and like a serious predator. Not he groped somebody at a party once, but he would force people to have sex. There were people who are alleging all kinds of things, and not just one or two women, but like many different people and even men. So there's some, bi curiosity, on bisexualism, something going on. Yeah, there's a lot of like conversations, a lot of rumors floating around as well in like more, I guess, people who are interested in hip hop and hip hop culture, those kinds of spaces. But it turns out he's been a predator for a long time, and he's been having these parties and coercing these women, possibly men, possibly minors. And it's been going on for some time. So there's that. I don't know how much I had invested in Diddy. I didn't know. Yeah. I mean, he's one of those people that's like, he could have died and I wouldn't have known.
Okay. Well, how do you feel about Dr. Jay Varma?
Was he
your North Star?
He's gross looking. I don't know.
Okay, Dr. Jay Varma.
So I can't say that. Well, no, okay. I can say that. Actually, I can say that.
He's one of you. He's like, one of your people.
Oh, one of me. One of my. Okay, I mean, he is sure. He's unattractive though.
He's he was a senior health advisor to Bill de Blasio during COVID, and was instrumental in the lockdowns and the school closures and the et cetera, the getting out a tape measure and keep this far away from everybody in line. And it turns out that he was involved in like going to these like underground rave sex parties during COVID that were apparently fairly rampant. And he's bragging about it. He was caught. There was a audio released where he's
very gross audio. This. Where he's talking about on like several different occasions, maybe to the same like sort of.
Yes. And his wife, who's a pediatrician, was also involved in some of this.
And he would, rent a hotel room and invite friends, and they would be, naked together. According to him. And it was just so wonderful. Just be naked. It's not even about the sex. Okay, Meghan, it's not about the sex.
No, it's
about the intimacy.
Right. And they would take MDMA or Molly, this like, party drug kind of thing. It was more of like a sort of explore your sexuality kind of thing. He should have said it was like a workshop.
And then it would be okay. Maybe they should have just masked.
Well, they probably did.
Take everything off.
But
keep the mask on.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. During the, sort of the height of the pandemic, I remember I was out, like walking my dog or the dog park or something. It was in New York City, and it was really cold. It was one of those like bitter cold days, and everybody was bundled up. And I don't know how I got into a conversation with somebody. It was a young person. Somebody like probably like 20, 21. I think Hispanic, like, you know, we were, you know, whatever. And she was saying, I actually don't even remember if it was a man or a woman. I think it was a woman. Like, what? Oh, I don't remember. Yeah, we were literally like,
okay, you just don't see each other. Okay, sure.
No, we were like totally bundled up. It was like minus 10 degrees. So this person was like, oh yeah, well, you know, there's all these like rave parties going on. You know, that's what I do. And I was like, what, really? And she was like, yeah, you know, but I always just assumed this was like something that the kids were doing.
Yeah.
And I never really thought about it again, but yeah.
Is everyone doing it? So this what freaks me out about all this, because it's just all these stories about middle-aged people rediscovering themselves, or turns out they have like this secret life, you know, like their regular life. They're just this doctor who's talking about taking COVID seriously and 10 steps of how to protect your family against the virus. And then by night, you know, he's, I don't know. Do people just have these, what's going on? How can you know for sure what normal is now? This is what it's making me paranoid. It's making me think that nobody has like normal sex anymore with just like a significant other. And we're all sexting and sending nudes to people and having.
I think I was just talking about this with a friend who's like who's like dating and stuff, and I think like vanilla sex is a real, that's like a real asset. Like if you can, like people should really just put in their profiles, like not like I am so boring, not into kink, just high school style sex.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I think that there's people who are like in middle age, people who are in their sort of 40s, think that that's like a sweet spot where their kids are sort of teenagers. They're comfortable in their lives. They don't want to get divorced or anything, but they're bored. And so they're exploring this kind of poly open marriage stuff. I mean, this novel, All Fours by Miranda July is this huge hit. And it's all about this.
What's it called?
I think it's called All Fours. Maybe it's on All Fours. I don't want to misspeak.
Oh my God. That sounds like
it's a huge, yeah.
Like
Miranda
an erotica
July is
kind of a.
No, it's a kind of literary. People, yeah, everybody's talking about.
Okay.
She's a very interesting.
And she's been taking Molly
filmmaker. It's called All Fours. Yes. And it's about a woman who has like a really just emotional affair, or at least I haven't read it, or at least I think it sort of starts off that way.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of like taking place in her head, like a lot of, you know.
Okay, so she wasn't actually on all fours. Like is that the conceit in the end?
I don't know. But something involving like she goes to a hotel room and just like hangs out there for a long time and sort of imagines this other life for herself. A lot of people talk about having emotional affairs. I do hear people talking about like, you know, walking right up to the line with people, but not doing anything. I mean,
is that even an affair? How well, if you're telling each other you love each other, okay, it's an emotional affair. But what's the difference between that and like a very close friend? Like,
because you know what you're doing. It's because you're flirting, and you know, both people
at the
know
point
what's
I think you're hiding it from your spouse. That's
of course they're hiding it. Yes, they're hiding
wherever that line is. I think that's
or they're hiding the nature. They're hiding that aspect of it. Maybe your spouse knows that you know this person.
Yeah, but if there's any part of the relationship you wouldn't tell your spouse, or you want your spouse to see, then I think that's it. It's an affair now, regardless of what you're actually doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, this whole sex positivity, the destigmatization of this, it has led to this kind of organizing. Like, it's not, people aren't just like sneaking off and having affairs. There's now a community, right? Or there's a movement.
Yeah. It's like sold to you in a package, but I think drugs have a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Like just the availability of drugs and prominence in like kind of like white collar circles, like the ability to just even get MDMA if you're some 50-year-old, physician.
You mean
safely and reliably and get enough of it for like a big party.
right?
Get
I
it
don't think that would
regularly
be
enough.
too hard.
Maybe, I guess maybe not in New York. I don't know how to get my hands on MDMA.
Well, I'm sure somebody listening to this
Can
podcast
someone
can
please help me out here? I don't. What?
We should record. We should both take it and just record. See what happens. Yeah, no,
I wouldn't want. You know what happens, right? Like you just tell. You just
yeah. You just,
you're filled with
ecstasy.
love.
It's just ecstasy, right?
Yeah, it's like chiller ecstasy. It's ecstasy without any amphetamines like added into it, without any additives. So it's like pure ecstasy. That's Molly, and you're just you're just supposed to be in love with the universe all the time and with everybody. And I guess that's what makes it a sex drug.
Yeah,
it's easier to. But I wonder what that does to consent. You know what I'm saying? Like, you convince your wife to take Molly and come to a sex party. Maybe she doesn't really want to go to the sex party. Maybe she wouldn't have said yes to any of that, but she said yes to the ecstasy. And then after that, she says yes to everything else.
Yeah. I mean, I think that probably goes on a lot. Yeah, I don't know. It probably has always gone on, but now it's just, it's like, it's not, it's just, it is a thing. It's like a lifestyle. It's out in the open. I mean, there used to be key parties.
Like the 60s. It feels like what I hear about the 60s, but like,
but the 60s, it was like this sort of John Cheever kind of world. I mean, there was that kind of stuffy, like the Don Draper kind of world. They would have key parties where they would put the car keys in a dish. Am I describing this wrong? I think that, yeah, like they would put them in there and then like you would grab somebody's keys and whoever they belong to, you would sleep with that person's, wife swapping kind of thing.
You have to make sure everybody there is sexy. Or you get
I don't know. They would drink a lot. Yeah, there's a whole. One. Yeah, there's a very famous book about this called "Thy Neighbor's Wife" by Gay Talese. Yeah, this has always gone on, in different ways. But I mean, yeah. To be ruining lives and businesses and childhoods by imposing COVID restrictions and then turning around and just flouting them is
it's incredible.
Disgusting.
Really incredible. Well, he says, according to him, everybody was tested and everybody got like super duper tested. And so that makes it okay.
Okay. So why don't you just test everybody?
Other people can't
and
do
go
that,
to school?
right? Like if you're a religious gathering and you make sure everybody's tested, well, that's not sufficient. But it is good enough for him. Special exceptions. I feel like there was a lot of that in the COVID era, and we're just hearing about it now.
Maybe they were, maybe they took a moment from their sex partying and chanted Black Lives Matter for a few minutes. And so it was okay.
Yeah. That makes it okay.
All right. So why don't we read some of the reader comments from our last episode? It was
been a while.
It was a paywalled episode, but we got some great comments.
First, there was a correction, or you mentioned something about 6 feet, 6 figures, 6 something.
Oh, the 666 rule.
Yeah, it's 6 feet, 6 figures, 6 inches.
Okay, I didn't.
This is a very like penis heavy like
eggplant
of eggplant. I'm sorry. Can you hear the thumping? I
that's fine. Yeah, I can, but that's okay.
Animals on the loose. Yeah.
You have animals?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, if you missed our last episode, it was about if you should, among other things, if you have a really hot nanny, is that a bad idea? Should you?
And then the conversation became about settling down and when you should be settling down, that kind of
right.
Thing. Whether and when, how, and all that.
Yeah.
So there were some good comments. There was someone who talked about. Well, I guess we shouldn't be saying their names in case they don't want to be.
No, don't say their names.
Okay, so this person says, as a 33-year-old East Coast millennial woman who is married, the only woman in a vast friend group to get married this young, a few others being the men of the group and about to have kids, there's just no way that our moms and friends' parents and their friends, boomer, liberal arts educated, leftist artists, intellectuals, lawyers, etc., would have ever been like, oh yeah, definitely try to marry your 23-year-old boyfriend. Like, that's the craziest thing to imagine. My mom can barely get on board with me having a baby at 34, and my 29-year-old to 35-year-old girlfriends are supportive, but far from the same place. It just says, I'm from a big city, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's worth noting that the joke when I was engaged at 30, married at 31 was, you're a child bride.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that this is, there's an aspect of this like comment that I think we left out in our conversation, which is the effect of parents, like non-supportive parents, or just the expectations that these like older Gen X boomer parents are bringing,
Mm-hmm.
and throwing onto their own kids that affects their own choices. I've heard similar things also from friends who are my age about their parents and how they conceive of them, and they just think you're just too young. You know, you're too young to settle down. You're too young to have a child.
Yeah, it's almost embarrassing to them. It's a status. It would be like a downwardly mobile kind of
like a stupid, like
thing.
You're stupid. If you're a young woman and you get married or you find your husband in your early 20s, you're stupid.
Well, also, like, why did they spend all that money on your college if you're going to go and do that? That kind of thing. I think.
Yeah.
Although it's interesting because Larissa Phillips, who's been a guest on our podcast, was on my podcast a couple of months ago on The Unspeakable, talking about how she tells her 20-something daughter to settle down and marry at a young age and start a family. She says, look, I'm young enough. I want to be a grandmother now. Like, I'm going to help you. Like, you're going to have a much easier time if you do this now. And if you stay local, and it's going to be great because, Larissa's like young. She's like 53 or something,
that would be a great deal for that, for her daughter, if she were to have a bunch of kids now and have a really dedicated babysitter. That only your own mom can be that kind of trusted and dedicated babysitter if you do have that relationship and you do have that, kind of mother.
But no, I think it would have been unthinkable in my time for my mother or like, people in my circles.
People in my circles. I mean, I can't think of anybody else who was married before me except one woman who was, and I'm from the South, so it was a little bit different. But still, there were only a few people only one person that I was close with, and then a few people that I knew who got married, and they were like, religious, and they came from very small towns, and we met in college and that kind of thing. But it was like, they were definitely the outliers, and they were definitely kind of, I don't want to say hicks, but they were understood as not cosmopolitan.
Right.
And it was suspicious. It was considered suspicious. I never found it suspicious, but I think that was the air, the understanding that they're making a mistake, And I think I was in my, like, out of my, my like true friends, I was always like the first. I was the first to do something like this. And I ended up actually having to find a whole new social circle,
I'm sure,
after I got married, because I was just so young and I was moving on to this like new part of life that they couldn't relate to. My other friends couldn't relate to. And really like they're only reaching it now. Like, some of them are starting to get married now, but now I'm in like mom world.
Right.
So it's isolating, actually, to skip on ahead if you want to.
Yeah. But, again, we were talking about how does a young 20-something woman convince her same age boyfriend to settle down?
Can't get an older man.
Pretty hard. Yeah. You got to get an older man, or you got to withhold sex. You got to say, I
don't think any young man will take that unless you're religious. Like, religious young man that might work on them, but I don't know if it works on them.
So here's another comment. This is a man, I guess. So he says, my first kiddo was born when I was like 26. My wife was 21. We'd been married for at least a year already and dated for a year before that. This is the result of religious upbringing. Meghan is totally right about the no sex before marriage bit. If you want young men to get married, as far as my brain can tell, there's no better driver than social pressure around this concept.
Yeah.
Also, when I was 20, I spent 2 years in a foreign country solving my own problems. I first read I read this as solving the country's problems, solving the problems of that country. The only contact with my parents was one weekly email. That growth as a person for a young man is important. It feels like we removed a lot of consequences from life that used to make us grow up and take accountability for ourselves at a younger age. Yeah, I think that's very true. Although a couple of people said they were not sure they agreed. Why would anyone want to marry a person who is only agreeing reluctantly because they want to have sex? That's a good point.
I think it's harder to do as an individual. It works when it's a societal expectation, then every woman is saying no to you as far as sex is concerned. And so you just pick the one you really like and want to have sex with for the rest of your life. And also,
but it doesn't, but that's like, my parents' generation, they were so unhappy. Like, they just, it's like they don't have any experience. Like they married the person who happened to be there at that time, and then they just have and then you spend your life just being bitter, and then you have affairs, and then
but maybe that's still better because at least you got married and at least you had kids. I mean, and I'm not advocating for this, by the way. I'm not advocating for withholding. I don't know if this is like a smart way to go about a relationship, or if any guy would really accept that. Frankly, like I don't know anybody who would accept it.
I can't. No, I mean that would just be weird. He would just think, "What a weirdo! Like what a weird girl."
And it's one thing to delay it. It's one thing to be like, okay, I want to get to know you and then let's have sex. But one of the things I think that really gets on, like, that really irritates men is if they find out, and this has a whole, it's a kind of a mythology even in the manosphere. I don't know how often it actually happens, but I think there's a lot of online men who would convince them that this happens all the time, where a woman will have this slutty, like experimenting kind of phase in her college years, and she'll have sex with all kinds of chads, and then she wants to settle down, and then she's going to say to this guy who's going to be her future husband that she wants to wait, or she wants to wait 3 months or 6 months or whatever. And so he's a fool, and he feels like he feels as if he's being denied a privilege when she was just rushing into things with everybody before, and I can understand that.
He's being penalized for being marriage material. It's not fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of get it, but I just don't know how often this happens.
I get the logic of that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. Maybe I was hanging out with the wrong group, but I didn't have lots of friends who were just having a blast, going to, visiting their chat of the week kind of.
No, that's the other thing is I feel like this this sort of obsession with sex and promiscuity, we haven't really had this since the sexual revolution, like since the 70s. I mean, it was the boomers who were acting like this, because before that, cultural mores and religion held people back. And then after that, in the 80s, it was AIDS. I mean, we were not doing this in my time in college and in my 20s, because it was terrifying. Like everywhere it was like sex equals death, and wear 10 condoms and all this kind of thing. And it was definitely, I'm not saying people didn't have casual sex, but it definitely put a damper on things. Like it was not something that you were necessarily going to want to do.
I definitely feel like even in my kind of more nerdy corner, casual sex was not a problem necessarily. You know what I mean? Like nobody was scared off from doing it. Definitely the STDs, and it was just irrelevant. Just be safe, wear a condom, I guess. But I don't remember it being a concern on anybody's mind at all. Some girls I remember were kind of slut shamed for being a little bit too open. But that was just like, it was just mild, like gossip, bitchiness from other girls. Not really something that followed them around, not something I think that haunted them. So I think there was actually a kind of a hookup culture, like openness towards this. I remember I found it surprising with some of my friends who would just like, they're dating this guy and like day 2, they're sleeping together. I remember I found that surprising. My own whatever I carried with me
it's
from my
just
religious upbringing.
I
thought it was,
I don't know. It's a bad strategy. I think
that was kind of what I thought. It was just like, it's, just get
I
to
mean,
know him. Just
yeah.
get to know him.
But I can't. I know.
It
I
puts the
can't.
woman in a bad position because then she becomes clingy. Like that's what I noticed was just like the guy is like chasing it, whatever, wanting sex, and they're dating, and then she gives it away, and then now she's clingy and he's not as interested. And I saw a version of that play out, and I guess both people were stupid and approaching it in the wrong way in every sense.
You mean because the pheromones, the hormonal response of having sex is going to make her clingy despite herself? I mean, there's an argument.
I remember
that happens.
I remember friends who would be really devastated.
They would catch feelings.
Yeah, well, they would find a guy they like. They would sleep together, and then the guy was over it. Maybe because he had sex and that was it. That was all he wanted, or maybe because they got to know each other and he doesn't like her that much anymore, But for her, because she had sex with him, there was something about the intimacy of that I think she found it harder to.
Yeah, well, I think that's a biological. That's a biological kind of imperative. I think that happens despite what we want to tell ourselves.
Right. And I saw several friends like fall into that over and over and over again. And I remember just thinking, why are you doing this to yourself?
Although I hear stories from like people on the apps and stuff, and like I can't believe the amount of people who've described like going to meet somebody for like coffee or something, on a first date, and then ending up back at someone's apartment, like having sex. It's like, ew, during the day, like
coffee breath
after you went to a diner. It's so weird.
Yeah.
I
don't think you should use sex as reward or punishment or anything or bait. And I think that's the kind of
unless
the problem.
Unless you're a reporter and you're interviewing a president.
But it is a natural. It is a step. It is. You have done something intimate, and you should take it seriously. And it should not be something that happens like immediately. It should not be done something you do to manipulate somebody, nor should it be done to keep them there, because they really want and they're demanding it and you're not ready. But people have trouble managing this, but we used to have rules about it. Yeah.
Had rules sort of, but I don't know. I mean, the third date thing, that always seemed a little silly and premature. Like, oh, you're going to have sex on the third date? Like that was kind of a trope. That was always a trope.
Mature to have sex on the third date.
Yeah, that's too soon, I think.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Is like from my generation, it was like, why wait till why?
Oh, why wait till the third date?
Right, like second maybe. Like it's perfect. It's perfectly okay. Or you don't even have to be dating. You can just sort of hook up after. Like there's a party and with all your friends, and then you're like making out and hooking up. And that was even more common, I think, than going on a formal date where a guy invites you out.
Yeah.
I think that's how I'm struggling to think how many actual like formal dates I went on in college. Because guys just didn't want to do that. They didn't just ask
college. No, I mean, where would you go?
Just hook up. Yeah.
Like if you're like, right. But like on a small campus, like where? What are you gonna go to? Like a restaurant? There's nowhere to go. Like let's go to the cafeteria.
I went to
you went to
city, so it was different. Like, but then it is weird because nobody has any money, so going out to a restaurant is odd. The whole thing is odd. It is easier to just hook up after you know, like a night out of drinking or whatever. But I guess that's where you make mistakes.
Yeah. So I don't know the solution to this. I don't know how to get people to get together, get people to commit at younger ages. I don't know.
Parents have a lot to do with it, though. I mean, I think that's what this commentator pointed out, that I think was a really good. It was a good thing to note, that the expectations that their own parents set have an enormous influence on.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of those like baby boomer moms, maybe more so than Gen X, like especially because baby boomers actually married pretty young. Like the demographics there were still getting married in their early to mid 20s, like especially older boomers. So I think a lot of those women, they want, better for their daughters. They want, them to have more opportunities than they did, or at least the same. Like they don't want to have a sense of going backwards. It's like, wow, I had this exciting life in my 20s. Why shouldn't you? But there's just so many things that are different. Again, they were not dealing with Tinder.
They were just dealing with one side of it, like they had seen how rushing into things and how badly that could potentially hurt a woman and what it could do to her life. They didn't know about what would happen on the other side. And now we do. So maybe there's correction, but I don't think there is.
It sucks actually, no matter what.
I think there's such a small percentage, like out of even in our discourse, even in our realm, so few people really are talking about these problems as real ones, like in the sense that people are struggling to have ultimately, like at the end of the day, children, marriage and then coupling, then whatever, all of that, and then having children. But that's what it's leading to. That's what we're not having enough of. People aren't really aware of it, and they're not really taking it on as a real issue. When I talk to normies, like outside of discourse, like outside of like these kinds of like people who are obsessed with Twitter, nobody knows that it's even an issue.
No, they still think that there's population.
I think this is good advice. The good advice is to tell your daughter to wait till she's done with school, figure out stuff with her career, like do all that first and then capstone marriage.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. You really have to think about it hard. I mean, I think I didn't start thinking about this hard until maybe 7-8 years ago. I definitely thought about it differently. I think we've covered a lot. We should tell people to like and subscribe as usual. And also we are changing a little bit of the structure. We're not, we want to discourage people from getting yearly memberships.
Yep.
Because it just kind of makes more work for us.
Well, yeah, it gets in the way of some things for us. We'll leave the details vague, but we prefer for you guys to be monthly members if you can.
Yeah.
And we're going to make the yearly just ridiculously expensive. So if you still want to, you can.
Right. We're going to discourage you. If you want to, you can become a yearly member of my other podcast if you have a real hankering to pay for the whole year Meghan. Or something. If you need, you can go to The Unspeakable, and it's also on YouTube now. So that's something. And I guess anything else they need to know?
I don't think so. Rate and review.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks, everybody.
See you next time.
See ya. Hi, it's Meghan. Just popping in here to let you know that my other podcast, The Unspeakable, the one I do without Sarah, is now available on video as well as audio and has its own YouTube channel, The Unspeakable with Meghan Down. There, you'll find not only an extensive back catalog of audio interviews I've done with guests like Sam Harris, John McWhorter, Jonathan Haidt, Nadine Strawson, Maria Bamford, and many, many, many others, but all of the weekly episodes on video going forward. And if you're a paying Substack subscriber, because I know you don't have enough Substacks to subscribe to, you get 2 bonus episodes every month just for you. So if you like this channel, I'd love it if you went over and liked and subscribed to The Unspeakable. It's just like A Special Place in Hell, except without Sarah. And how could you pass that up? Hope to see you there.